blasting, billowing, bursting forth with the power of 10 billion butterfly sneezes.
I'm Tom Bain, and this is Wine, Money, and Song. If you're interested in wines and wanting to find out the best values, please subscribe. As you can see, our surroundings are a little different. We're expanding the studio. It's not quite done yet. Things are taped up. They're not permanently attached. If something falls down, it falls down. We're not finished, but the idea of the expanded studio will be to possibly have some guests in and possibly do a podcast in the near future. So first of all, this is the first episode of 2024. Happy New Year to everyone. I'm hoping this coming year is a better year for me and my family. We had some health issues this year, and personally for me, I had pneumonia for over a month. I was pretty sick, and I'm still coming out of it, but hopefully all of us will have a safe and prosperous new year. What I'm going to try to do in the next two episodes is first I want to go over what happened last year, 2023, in the wine market, and how it's going to affect your buying decisions next year, 2024. And I'll try to tie what happened in 2023 to what you should be looking to do in 2024. So let's sketch back, and I have a lot of numbers to just go over what happened last year. But just remember something. The last several years, COVID-19 had a big impact on us all and on the economy in general, but in the wine market, because of distribution chains being interrupted, and there was a lack of supply of a lot of wines. They couldn't get through, and if you remember, a year or so ago, 2 years ago, remember all of the large ships that were backed up, 30, 40 of them, and things couldn't get through, and a lot of merchandise couldn't get through. And when there's a lack of supply, there's an increase in prices. Economics 101. And that's what happened, the results of COVID. There was very small supply of things, and importers, retailers, everybody raised their prices a lot. And because it was a small supply, the wine sold through because customers didn't have much of a choice, so they emptied up a little more, or sometimes up to 20-25% more. But part of the problem is when you raise prices, they don't like lowering prices. And that's true with a lot of things. And in the wine business, hey, all of a sudden they're getting 20% more. And then all of a sudden the supply comes in. They say, it's sold at that price. Why don't I keep it? Well, the year 2023 put a kibosh to that. And I'm going to just recite some of the numbers. Now, all of the merchandise is flowing freely. Last year it was flowing freely. So the economies have to come in balance. Supply and demand have to come in balance. And what we saw in 2023, there were plenty of supply, but the prices were too high and demand went down. Now let me recite some of the numbers. Well, obviously, there was a lot of dark clouds covering the wine industry in 2023. And a lot had to do with rising inflation, and costs went way up on a lot of things. And if you remember, during COVID, the lack of supply at wineries, they couldn't get wine bottles, they couldn't get corks, even cardboard boxes sometimes. So that put a snafu into things. And when you have a lack of basic manufacturing articles, you're going to get a disruption in distribution, and that's what happened. And the prices spiraled with that. But last year, because of inflation and rising interest rates, had a lot to do with the problems, and people kept the prices going up. And the second year in a row in 2023, per capita consumption went down. And that's a very bad sign. That is a very bad sign for the health of the wine industry. And that's something that has to be addressed, that the younger markets are not adapting wine. And I know beer also is going down. So let me give you some of the numbers that I've downloaded and just compiled from 2023. Now, we like to use the LiveX indexes. They have several indexes which cover certain areas of wine. So the LiveX 100 last year went down 13%. It's not 2%, it's not 3%, it's double digit, 13%. And they have a fine wine 50, which is basically the first growths and a few of the other expensive Bordeaux's. That went down 14%, double digits. And the LiveX 1000 went down 13%. That means there's 1,000 wines that they, a broader section of the market. That went down 13%. Those numbers are bad. They're really bad. They're really bad. And anytime there's a downward trend, just a few percent mean a lot, but double digit going down, that's kind of scary. And this year, there are less vintages available on the LiveX. And that means people only are demanding the better vintages. They don't want to look at the other. If they're going to spend their money, they're going to spend it on the better vintages. And more wine has come onto the market. People who have big wine cellars, they're either cutting the supply of what they have, or they're selling. As I said, we're in construction. So back to the point, more wine is on the market. And when you have more sellers coming on the market and more people trying to turn a profit, and I think that's the end of that, okay? So there's no more wine on the market, and part of the reason why people are selling is it's costing more for wine storage, insurance rates are going up, and it's just all those rise, of course, of keeping of wine. People want to get a profit now and just defray their costs. Now, producers too have charged way too much money on their recent vintages, and that's, to me, that's the main problem why why sales are going down. Formerly, when producers would release prices, it would be less costly in the beginning and you would buy it, and over a period of time they would go up in price. But what producers have done, and especially Bordeaux and Top Burgundies have done this, is that they priced the wine too high right at the entry of the market, and there's no room for appreciation. And a lot of times in these premium segments of the market, people want to see appreciation. They're buying so the wines go up. And if you're not throwing that bone at the people, the wine consumer, that it's going to go up, it's less appealing for them to buy now. They can wait. And also what it does, it makes people look outside of the most recent vintages and go back, and they look at the older vintages on the market that are better. They're older and more ready to drink. So I think that people have to understand that that's a big part of the problem, and lowering prices now. It's very hard to get producers to lower prices. The only time they're going to lower prices is when the product doesn't move. And I think in 2024, I think we have a good probability that that's going to happen. Let me tell you a little story about the late 80s and the early 90s. Phylloxera, which occurred a lot in Napa Valley. And this was in the 1980s and 90s. Red wines were selling like crazy. That was after 60 Minutes did the French Paradox and people should be drinking red wine. And the sales of red wine went through the roof. Literally went through the roof. Everyone, and there were people who didn't drink wines before, they were buying red wine because it was better for you. You're going to live longer. So all of a sudden, with phylloxera, it was a beetle plague that ate the roots of the vines. And they had to rip it out and they had to replant. And when you do that, you replant. You really can't start producing wine from grapes until the vines are at least 3 years old, something like that. You can maybe make a rosé in the first year or two, very light. But to produce red wine, generally 3 years or more. So all of a sudden, there was a lack of supply of red wines in Napa Valley mainly. And the demand was great. So what they started to do is they started getting inferior grapes and they started to incorporate it in with their regular wines, and they got away with it. They raised the price, they used inferior grapes, and all they had to do, they raised it 10%, 20%, 30%, and still sold, and they were making money. And to me, I didn't feel good about that. And it took 5 or 6 years before the balance of supply and demand came back. But they were using inferior grapes in those wines, and they were selling it. And that goes to show you how uneducated a lot of the wine market is. And that's why there's Wine, Money and Song too. And right now prices are too high. And let me just go through some basic numbers. Price of Bordeaux is down 10%. Price of Burgundy, 16%. And Champagne, 17%. Rhone, 19%. The one that had the smallest amount of loss was the Italian index, which is Piemonte wines, Brunellos, Barolos, Barbarescos, and Super Tuscans. They were only down 6%. Part of the problem now is that inventories are swelling. They're swelling in warehouses and bonded warehouses where people are holding wine. And eventually these wines have to be sold. And the only way you sell these wines is by getting the prices down. And we're going to see in 2024. And a big problem in 2023 is we had the 2022 Bordeaux Futures campaign. And the best way I can describe that campaign, it was flaccid. It was flaccid. Couldn't stand up on its own. It went, in the beginning, everyone was so excited, and the wines are going to be great, but the prices were so high, 25% more. What happened was everyone was excited, then went, So they didn't move. They're still out there. This year, you're going to be able to buy them, and I think you're going to be able to buy them at a lower prices. So sales during that campaign, very slow. And it was really bad timing to raise the prices. So in the next episode, I'm going to give you your strategy on what you should be doing in 2024. So hopefully you can digest all that, and hopefully some of these numbers I got a little jumbled up, but as you see, double-digit reduction in sales is kind of scary. and that's not healthy in the wine market.